Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez and you are on the 20th episode of The Final Cut. And today I'm going to be going over my thoughts and review of Halloween H20, 20 years later, or H20 so to speak. Anyway, I'm going to go over the synopsis, cast and crew, and my personal thoughts and review of this Halloween entry. Here we go. Halloween H20 stars Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, Josh Hartnett as her son John, Adam Arkin as Will Brennan, Michelle Williams as John's girlfriend Molly, Adam Han-Bird as Charlie, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe as Sarah, Janet Leigh as Norma, LL Cool J as Ronnie, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jimmy. It is directed by Steve Miner. It is the year 1998 and 20 years after Michael Myers' attack on his unknown sister Laurie Strode. Since then, Laurie has lived with the danger of Michael tracking her down again, and therefore faked her death in a car crash and reinvented herself as Carrie Tate, who is now a headmistress of an executive school. However, she is having trouble with drinking problems and nightmares that feature Michael Myers, while also having run-ins with her rebellious teenage son, John, who doesn't believe that Michael Myers is alive. Some of the kids decide to have a Halloween party, and Laurie comes out and tells the truth to her boyfriend/teacher, Will. However, somebody searched through the papers of recently deceased Dr. Loomis and finds the info on Laurie's whereabouts. Michael has found her, and people start to disappear. But this time, Laurie Strode is not going to run, and she stays to fight Michael Myers to the death, who is there trying to complete a job that has taken nearly 20 years so far. Yeah, that's pretty much what Halloween H20 was about, and it's the 7th film in the series. Originally, John Carpenter was approached to direct this, but him and Mustafa Akkad, the producer, have a feud, and he wanted $10 million, and the producer thought that was too much, which John Carpenter had good reason, because he didn't get his fair share from the first Halloween. So he declined, but they did get Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode, and the reason why she wanted to make this 20 years later was to make basically a visual thank you note to her fans for the film series that really started her career. And you could tell that there's a lot of love for the character Laurie Strode, and Jamie Lee Curtis does a fantastic job, and then getting this project started, it is a fitting conclusion. Halloween has had some great and not so great sequels, much like many other horror franchises. But like Nightmare on Elm Street, it's amazing that a 7th installment brings everything back to basics like the earlier films. It has the main protagonist that started it all back in front and center. And it is wonderful. Steve Miner directs this. He directed Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, as well as films like Forever Young and Big Bully. This was also Josh Hartnett's film debut. He plays Laurie's son, Jamie Lee Curtis' son, and all the actors do a great job for what is given. And Janet Leigh, Jamie Lee Curtis' mother, makes a cameo, and there is even some references to Psycho with the same car and license plate. And then her saying everybody's entitled to one good scare is a reference to Halloween. It's just great stuff all around. And really, there's a lot of references to Psycho in the first Halloween. I mean, after all, Dr. Sam Loomis is named after Sam Loomis, the boyfriend in Psycho, so that's kind of cool. And Billy Loomis on Scream was based off upon Sam Loomis. So without Psycho, you wouldn't have Halloween, and without those two, you wouldn't have Scream. And Kevin Williamson did some rewrites over Robert Zepia's screenplay. Originally, 4, 5, and 6 were going to be canon. They kind of indirectly are, but in this one, this film kind of ignores the other sequels, and pretty much it's like a choose-your-own-adventure where Halloween 1 and 2 happen, skip the rest, and go straight to this. This is a trilogy closer for the Laurie Strode trilogy. And to be honest, it really works in that regard that way. Some stuff from the other films could be considered canon and not mentioned, but this one really serves as a fitting conclusion, and you don't really have to watch the other ones to watch this one. You could just watch the original, and even 2, and then this, or just the original. And that's what's so great about it. But yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is a much stronger Laurie Strode. Even though she has more of these issues, she's established as this dean of this executive school, and I like that. It shows where she has gone in life ever since she faked the car accident that's mentioned in the other Halloween sequels. And it's great because it gives Laurie Strode, the protagonist, much more to lose this time around than when she was just a babysitter looking after a couple of kids in the original 20 years prior. So it really adds a lot to the stakes. And also with her son, there's just so much more again for Laurie to lose. And of course the teenagers act like teenagers. People get killed. There is some good scares, and it has a very kind of crazy beginning. It's Dr. Sam Loomis's nurse that you see from Halloween and Halloween 2, and a couple of kids help her look into a break-in at her house. They get killed, she gets killed, and Michael Myers leaves a house in the same car he did in the first one. So there's just a lot of throwbacks to the original Halloween, and you could just tell that this is just filled with nostalgia and love. It's not slasher horror, so to speak, but there's a lot more suspenseful moments, and in a way, again, it's like a throwback to the original. There's a scene where Michael Myers is like going around. There's this part where this mother and daughter go to the bathroom, and you don't know if he's going to kill the little girl and her mother, and it's very kind of on the edge of your seat. He ends up stealing their car, and they're fine, but still just creating that dread, and then him following Laurie Strode around town, much like the original. It creates that suspense and kind of Alfred Hitchcock vibe that the original film had, and that the sequels were really lacking in my opinion. There's a lot of great humor with LL Cool J and the kids, and Michael Myers, his mask looks really good in this. They had two different masks at some point, but they end up deciding on one, and in some scenes you get to see the other mask, but there's some great stuff. It's the shortest of all the Halloween films as well. It's only 86 minutes, but again, this film gets straight to the point, and I like that about it. You can watch the other Halloween films, especially the ones with Laurie Strode, and then just watch this, and it's a fitting, fast, action-packed conclusion, and a well-fitting one at that. There's some blood, there's some scares, and it's very intense. Not to the point where you have to stop watching it, but it definitely has that well-crafted charm that the original Halloween film had. And the score by John Ottman was really, really great. It kind of has an orchestrated score, so you go back to like the instrumentals of the original without the synthesizer from 2, but then you add an orchestra behind it, and it gives it a much more epic and grand vibe for this so-called finale. Yeah, there's some references, and originally they're going to watch So I Married an Axe Murderer starring Mike Myers, so that's kind of a cool inside joke I wish they kept, but again, after the height of Scream, they added it more for that audience. And that's one thing, it's 20 years later, not only did you get to see where Laurie Strode is, but this is kind of more for like the kids who grew up with the Scream films. And I like that in a way because, again, it's 20 years later. It honors what came before. It gives some references to Psycho, the first Halloween, yet adapts it to the new genre of horror and the way things are going with I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream 1 and 2 at the time. And I'm glad that they didn't make Laurie a victim. Jamie Lee Curtis delivers her best performance as Laurie Strode, and she just kicks ass. That final fight between her and Michael Myers is just intense, on the edge of your seat again, and just going after one another is so great. She is no walking carpet for anybody, and she doesn't take shit this time. You could tell the effect of the first films on her character here, and I like that for a horror film, because a lot of times you have cheap sequels where they kill off the main character, Halloween Resurrection, so to speak. That doesn't exist. This is the conclusion of Halloween. Just like, okay, Godfather 3 exists, we all know that. Halloween Resurrection exists, the Rob Zombie Halloweens exist, but you know what? We don't count them. They don't exist. We end it with Part 2, we end it with Halloween H20, and this is the proper Halloween conclusion. The sequels that came a little bit before and after with the remakes is just producers getting greedy. But this, you can tell from Jamie Lee Curtis, this is a proper conclusion to end things right. So for all intents and purposes, in my honest opinion, and many other Halloween fans, H20 is a conclusion. But yeah, she gets a lot more to do. There's a romance with Adam Arkin's character that's just like really great. Adds another layer to Laurie Strode. And you see how strong she's become, but I like that about the sequel, is that you could tell the experiences she had in the previous ones. Again, like cheap sequels, they either kill off the main characters or they don't progress. And in this, you actually see the character progression, not only with everything Laurie Strode has been going through with her nightmares and drinking, but you get to see the woman she has become because of Michael Myers, her brother, trying to kill her. So that there's no holds bar on the end of that fight. It is just fantastic. It's similar to the way Heather Langenkamp came back as Nancy against Freddy Krueger in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I mean, they really go all out in this film. To the finale, all the way to the stabbing, her taking up to the paramedics, and then she even tells her kids, it's like, go to the baker's house, kind of like the McKinsey's house in the first Halloween. And here's another cool reference. The Bakers are Drew Barrymore's parents at the beginning of the first Scream, so there's another tie-in there. But that whole ending with the car wreck and then Michael getting impelled by the car, and that whole ending of him reaching out to her, you think they're about to touch hands, and she's like, no. Gets an axe and chops his goddamn head off. The best damn kill against a horror movie icon in the history of cinema. She goes full Highlander on Michael Myers' ass, and it's just wonderful. Chops his head off, you hear the theme, just see her breathing, and then it's just like, that's the end. That's where it ends, on that exciting note. She just chops his head off. And they did away with that in the sequels, but I'm not going to even mention that again. That is the best way to kill off a horror movie icon. Jason, Michael Myers, well, Freddy has his excuses, but they always come back. And this time she's like, you know what, try coming back from this. Chops his head off, brilliant conclusion, 20 years later, and ultimately it is a love letter to the fans and just everything Halloween. This film is a true fitting conclusion, and you bet your ass it makes the final cut. I give Halloween H20 a 4.5 out of 5, 8.5 out of 10, and an A. It makes the final cut. It is one of the best Halloween films in the series. My personal favorites are you can watch this as a Laurie Strode trilogy, Halloween 1, 2, and this one. But my personal favorites are Halloween, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and H20. Those are my personal favorites in the series. And this just ends everything on such a high note. And I love that opening of Dr. Loomis's voiceover. That is fantastic. And the kills and everything are very intense. Again, it's not done in the slasher horror way that was done in Halloween 2. This feels more real. It feels more like the first Halloween. And because of that, I highly recommend seeing this. Especially if you're a fan of the other Halloween films. This is perfect. And also, if you might have been disappointed with number 2 and some of the sequels, and you love the original Halloween, definitely check this out. Most definitely. It is a well-crafted, superb finale to the Halloween series. There's just so many throwbacks to the original Halloween, other films like Psycho, and then just different lines and situations. Even like when they're in class, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie's just like teaching a class, and this student answers a question about fate. And it just goes full circle with the first film where Laurie Strode's listening to a class and they're talking about fate. So you get the question in the first and then you get the answer here, so it just goes full circle with everything. And it's just fantastic. It is one of the best horror films I have seen. And there's something to be said about great 7th installments. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, this, that just gets everything back to basics. And yeah, don't watch the 8th installments after that or the remakes because they managed to screw it up. So definitely this Halloween, check out Halloween H20, 20 years later. I like calling it H20 though.